Hello students, welcome back. In our last video, we did some pretty awesome stuff. We built out our gameplay world, which consisted of space and a star field that actually moved down the screen. And we built out our player object, that little ship that we could fly all over our gameplay world. In this video, we're going to do some equally awesome stuff, but this won't be any changes that we will necessarily visually see to our game. Most of what we're going to do is going to be some back-end logic for our game. We have to give our game the ability to think and understand what state of operation it is currently in. And so we're going to use three different states here for our game: a start state, a play state, and a lose state. So what exactly is a game state? Well, our game is going to recognize which of those three states it is in, and it is going to allow certain functionality of our game. It's going to show different parts of our game. For example, when we are in the start state, maybe we want to show a start menu to the user, right? And in this state, we shouldn't be able to fly the ship. Our stars shouldn't be able to move. And once we hit enter, we'll transition out of the start state. That start menu will go away and we'll be presented with our gameplay world, and the stars will move. We can fly our ship and we'll play our game. And then eventually we'll die. And when we die, we'll stop flying the ship, we'll stop our stars, and we'll show a lose screen. So our game is going to have the ability to sort of swap in and out of these different states and show the different screens that we want. Now, those screens that we're going to show are going to be known as overlays, because the truth is we're not swapping our game world out. Our game world will always be there. And what we'll do is draw certain screens over our game world. We'll draw them as overlays because they'll sit over the game world. Our start screen will sit over the game world, and our lose screen will sit over the game world. So we'll have start overlays and lose overlays. And our game will know when to swap them in and out due to the state management that we write. So let's head to our program to write that state management right now. So over here on my computer screen, I have vscode.dev open with lesson 2's starter file. I'm going to minimize this file here, and I'm going to open that file directly in the browser. So Nova Strike lesson 2 starter. And here is where we begin. This is exactly where we left off in our last lesson, I think. Our star field moves, it's continuous, and our player can fly all over the screen. So this looks really, really good. So now when we start our game though, we're just thrown right into the play state. I want to have a start menu, right? So really I should begin the game in this start state and show a start overlay. So let's head to the computer screen and let's figure out how we're going to do this. So mission 1 says we want to add our game state values. So the program needs to know, like, what are my options for my different game states? And we got to store all of those options in a variable. So this is sort of like a new system, right? We got this like game state system. So we should maybe store that in our student edit zone. So if I hit Command F or Control F, I can bring up my search bar. Mission 1 is there. I'm going to hit down to go to mission number 1, where we have to add the game state values for the start, play, and lose states. And if you look, we're making this a constant, because once we define all of the states that we can operate in, we will never change it over our game. And this is actually, just like we said, inside of our student edit zone. So this is perfect. We can add whatever states we want in here, and we shouldn't break our game. So this is an object. You see how this is inside curly brackets? So our game mode variable is an object. And if I scroll down a little bit, just outside of my student edit zone, we have another object, our player object that we worked with in our last video. Objects have properties. Our player has an X property, a Y property, a size property, and a speed property. And then you set the value of those properties. So we're going to do the exact same thing here for our game mode object. We're going to define some properties. We're going to give a property of the different states that we can operate in. And I'm going to make them all capital letters to emphasize that these are states of operations. So we're going to have a start property for our start state. And its value will be a string, so quotations, and we'll put the word start in all capital letters. And then a comma. And our next property will be our next gameplay mode of operation, or game state, the play state. And its value will be play. And then we'll have a lose property. And its value will be lose. And there are our three states of operation. Perfect. Once we define them, we'll say, hey, game, you can operate in any of these game modes: start, play, or lose. Now, we could add more. Like, we could easily put like a pause state, and maybe if you want to have a pause state, or maybe a menu state if you're going to look through a menu, and you could show like a pause overlay or a menu overlay. But right now we're going to limit this to just our 3 states of operation. Mission 1, in the books. Nice work. But there's one problem here. Like if I'm thinking about this, okay, this is a constant, which means we're never going to change this. I probably need a variable that we can change, one that will like change from start to play to lose, right? That's tracking the current game mode, right? I got to be able to change the current game mode. So let's go to mission number 2 and see where that puts us. Mission number 2 says, hey, set a new gameplay variable. So now we're outside of the student edit zone, and it says, set the current game mode to the title screen. Make the game begin in the correct state. So here we're defining a variable with let. Remember, this is when you want to be able to change your variable. So we do want to change our current game mode variable. This is going to track what our current mode of operations is. We've got 3 options. We've got start, we got play, and we've got lose. Well, when we begin the game, we want to set it to start. But of course, you can't just type the word start. It doesn't work that way. Your game doesn't understand what this start is. So where are we storing all of our possible modes of operation for our game? Well, let's see. Oh, that was what mission 1 was all about. We created this game mode object that has all of our possible operations here. So we are going to use our game mode object. The current game mode variable will equal our game mode object. I'm going to just scroll down and do a little old tab for autocomplete, dot, and then here are our properties. The game mode has a lose property, a play property, and a start property. When we begin our game, we want to set it to the start property. Now, this is awesome. So when we refresh our game, we start our game, we now have a variable called current game mode, which is equal to start. So we know we are in the start phase. Well, right now, I'm playing the game. That makes no sense because if we're in the start phase of our game, we should show the start overlay. We just got to tell the program to go ahead and do that, which is going to bring us to mission number 3. Mission number 3 finds us in a function, draw start overlay. So this is down here with all of our other draw functions. We got draw player, draw background, draw HUD. Now we're going to work on drawing our start overlay. Let's look at what we do here. First, we say, no stroke. Give me an invisible marker so you don't see the outline of the shape that I'm about to draw. And then we fill our paint bucket with a paint color. So we fill our paint bucket with overlay BG color, which is 0, 0, 0, 0 in the red, 0 in the green, 0 in the blue, which makes black. And then it is transparent. So we're going to be able to see behind it. It's got an alpha channel of 0.66, which is great because we then draw a rectangle, which uses 4 pieces of information: the X coordinate of the top left and the Y coordinate of the top left. 0, 0. That's right here. And then we're going to take the width of our rectangle as the width of our canvas and the height of our rectangle as the height of our canvas. So we are going to draw a black rectangle starting right here that sits over our entire game window, hence the name overlay. But it's going to be transparent. So we're going to be able to see behind it. So that should be really, really nice. That is going to serve as our start screen, a full black rectangle sitting over our game window that we can slightly see behind. So I can still see my stars and my ship. But we want to display some text on that screen. So that's what mission 3 is all about. It says draw the start screen overlay. Show the title over the game board. So if we look here, we already have some text that we're showing. It says text size 18, and then we are showing some text. Alien ships have crossed into the sector. Launch your fighter and push the fleet back into the void. Press enter to begin. I would call this flavor text. It's text that sort of adds to the lore or the story or the mood of the game. So this works really great. It kind of makes it like, that space shooter. I'm ready to fight the aliens after reading that. And if you look here, each of these text functions are positioning the text horizontally at width over 2. So width over 2 is, here's width divided by 2, smack dab in the middle. Our height, our vertical positioning, is just going to take the height of our canvas and multiply by some decimal number, 0.44, then 0.55, and then 0.66. Well, if we did height times 0, that would put us at 0, which is all the way up here. And if I did the height of our canvas times 1, it'd be all the way down here. Multiplying by any decimal in between positions us in that range. So like height times 0.5 would put us right in the middle. Height times 0.6 would be here. Height times 0.7 is here. Height times 0.8, height times 0.9, height times 1 is right here. So essentially we are stacking these three pieces of text, one on top of each other. So that's really great, but we should probably have the title of our game on our start screen. So let's go and make another piece of text. But before we do that, there's a big problem here. Do you see how we have a paint in our paint bucket right now is this transparent black? We never change that paint. So when we make our next text, it's going to be that same color. It's going to be a black text on a black background. We'll never see it. So we got to set our new paint color. So we're going to fill and we'll put in our text color, which is that white color that we looked at in our last video, right? Where is it? F4, F7, FF. All right. Then we should probably like align our text. So let's do our text setup. So we'll do text align. And how do we want to align it in the X direction? I think in our last video we did left and center. So here's the problem with left and center. This is our horizontal alignment, which means we're going to put the left side of our string. So this A character is going to go dead smack dab in the center of our canvas. The L will go right in the middle of our canvas. I don't want that. Because we're putting this as the center of our canvas, I'm going to want to center align our strings. So I think that will work much nicer. And then I'm going to up my text size for the title of my game. So I'll say text size. I'm going to make it 60 pixels. Now that that is set, let's call the text function and we'll put the title of our game, Nova Strike. It needs three pieces of information. The text that we want, Nova Strike. The X position of that text, center of our canvas, so width divided by 2, and then the vertical position. So I'm going to make this above all of the other ones. So I'll do height times 0.30. We'll do that. Perfect. So now our start overlay is complete. Let's go check it out. I'm going to refresh the page. Hello, start overlay? Start screen. Where's my start screen? I don't see my start screen at all. Bummer. Well, I knew that was going to happen because we wrote this function, right? We wrote the set of instructions to create the start overlay. But we're never actually calling these instructions. We're never calling this function. So writing the function and then actually calling the function are two separate things. So maybe mission 4 is going to have us call this function. Mission 4 puts us in draw lose overlay. Oh, bummer. Looks like we have a little bit more work to do on our overlay system because we had a start screen. We also have a lose screen, so we might as well draw the lose overlay next. And let's look at what we're doing in here. No stroke. Give me an invisible marker so you don't see the outline of the shape that I'm about to draw. Fill. I'm going to put some paint in my paint bucket so I can color a shape. It's going to be a transparent black. And then I'm going to create a rectangle that sits over the entirety of my game window. Upper left-hand corner, 0, 0. The width is the width of my canvas. The height is the height of my canvas. So starting here, I'm going to draw a transparent black rectangle that sits over my game window. And that's going to be my draw lose overlay. I changed the paint in my paint bucket to be white. I align my text. I set the text size, and then I write Nova destroyed. This is our game over. So that means our ship is dead. The Nova strike is striking no more. The Nova has been destroyed. And then we say the alien assault has broken through your position. All right, perfect. So we want to continue this on here. Just a couple more pieces of text. It says we should show restart instructions because even though we died, we want the user to play again. So we got to inform them how to play again. So I'm going to call the text function and I'll create a string. I'll say press enter to relaunch. So enter will allow them to play again. I want to position this horizontally at width divided by 2. And vertically, I'll make it just below the previous text. I'll do height times 0.55. All right, and then let's do one more piece of text because they might want to go right to the title screen. So I'll say press R for title screen. So that'll be like a hard reset of our game. And we'll put this at width over 2 and a height of 0.66. So we'll stack it below. All right, start overlay is done. Lose overlay is done. Of course, am I going to see the lose overlay? No, I'm not going to see it because we just wrote the instructions. We're not actually calling the instructions. So we've got these overlay systems in place, but we now have to tell the computer to actually show the correct overlay. Swap out the game window for an overlay screen. And that is what mission 5 is all about. Mission 5 says, show the correct overlay for the current game state. All right, well, where's this put us? Mission 5 finds us in draw scene. Okay, so we're drawing our background, we're drawing our player, we're drawing our HUD, and then we got to figure out how to draw our overlays. Let's just quickly review where draw scene is getting called from to make sure this is a solid understanding. I'm going to jump, you can stay right here. So I'm going to go to our default P5 game loop functions. So remember, the setup function gets called once as soon as you start your game. Boop, right there. Boop, right there. Boop, right there. The draw function gets called every single frame of your game. So if you're running at 60 frames per second, this is going to get called 60 times in 1 second. And in here, we're updating our players, we're updating our stars. We are drawing our scene. So draw scene gets called 60 times a second. Now, look here, this is kind of cool. What if I just like comment out draw background? So I just put 2 lines here. Now I'm no longer going to draw my background. Boop, it's gone. It's just my ship in the void. What if I bring it back in, but I comment out draw player? Okay, the star's here, but where'd my ship go? He's gone. We're not drawing him anymore. So drawing and calling the correct function to draw is really important here. So I just got to call, if I want to see my start overlay, I just got to call that function. So why don't we do it in here? We'll say draw start overlay. I'm going to go down and hit tab for autocomplete. But if I want to call that function, run the set of instructions that I've previously written, I need a set of parentheses here, and then a semicolon for good JavaScript. All right, so now when we run draw scene, we're going to draw our start overlay every single frame of the game. Wow, there it is, Nova Strike. That's a great looking start menu right there. Press enter to begin. So I'm really happy. That overlay is working really nice. I can see behind that giant black rectangle that I made, so I'm happy. Well, I'm so happy. Let's test the lose overlay because I have 2 overlays. Let's draw lose overlay. Tab for autocomplete. A set of parentheses to call this set of instructions and a semicolon for good JavaScript. All right, let's see. Let's get happy. Oh, I'm less than happy because this looks just weird. What is happening? Well, we're drawing. Let's look at what happens. We're drawing our background, and then on top of it, we're drawing our player. And then on top of that, we're drawing our HUD. Then on top of all of that, we're drawing our start overlay. And then on top of all that, we're drawing our lose overlay. So it's like we're stacking everything one on top of the other. And right now, we are drawing both of our overlays, one on top of the other. I don't want to do that. Get out of here. I don't want to always draw my start overlay. I don't want to always draw my lose overlay. Every single frame of the game? No, we shouldn't be doing that. In fact, we got to ask a question. If some condition is true, if and only if that condition is true, then we'll draw our start overlay. And then we'll ask another question. If some condition is true, if and only if that condition is true, then we'll draw our lose overlay. So what question do we want to ask? When do we want to draw our start overlay? Well, we only want to draw the start overlay if we are currently in the start state, if our mode of operation is start. Do you remember in mission 2, we created a variable called current game mode. We're going to check to see what the value of current game mode is. And if it is equal to start, then we'll draw the start overlay. Now, how do we check for equality? Well, 1 equal sign assigns a value. 2 equal signs is a loose check for equality. And 3 equal signs is a strict check for equality. So we're going to use 3 equal signs. And we're going to ask, does the current game mode value, does the value of current game mode equal our game mode object's start method, start property? Boom, right here. So if our current game mode, if the value of this variable is equal to the game mode object's start property, which is that string. Do you remember what that string was? Start. We said, okay, start. If that answers yes, then we'll call the draw start overlay. Well, let's extend this. When do we want to draw our lose overlay? If the current game mode variable is equal to 3 equal signs for a check for equality. If it is equal to our game mode object's lose property. All right, so now we have a way to check and only show the correct overlay. So there's only one thing here. Right now we're asking 2 separate questions, okay? If this one, however, answers yes, if the current game mode is equal to start, then this will never be true, right? If our game mode is equal to start, it can never be equal to lose because it's already set. So we don't really need to ask this question. So really, this line is only a follow-up question that only gets asked if this said no or evaluated to false. So the way we set that is we write else if. So we have if, else if. If this, do this. Else if, ask this question. And if this is right, then we'll run this line right here. All right, so let's test this out. So what is our current game mode variable? Well, I think we set it in mission 2. So I'm going to go back to mission 2 here for a second. In mission 2, we set it to start. All right, so we're in the start mode, which means the start overlay should now get drawn. All right, and there it is. Let's change it to the lose overlay. So if I set our game mode to lose, now when we start the game, we automatically lose. Boom, Nova destroyed. The game is over. What if I set it to the play state? So let's set it to play. Well, it's not start and it's not lose, so no overlay should be shown. Hey, and there we go. This is going to be the play state. See, but we're manually changing the mode of operation, right? I'm typing in here play, start, lose. I don't want to manually type those in. I want the game to be able to change these modes in and out when it needs to. So we're going to have to program that functionality here. But before we do that, let's set it back to start mode because we're good video game developers. When someone starts our game, we're not going to have them lose the game or automatically go into playing. We'll give them a start screen. When we set that, here is our start screen. You notice how the stars are moving still? And look, I can fly all over. I shouldn't be able to play the game before I enter the play state. I got to be prompted to press enter to begin, right? Okay. So once I hit enter, then we should play. Right now, I can't move during a start screen. That's bad. That's bad coding. So let's go to mission 6. Mission 6 says, hey, only update movement during the play mode. Stop the game action while other overlays are showing. So right now, if you look, we are inside of the P5 draw function, which gets called every single frame of our game. And we're asking a question. And our question here is true. Well, here's the thing about that question. That question is always going to say yes, yes, yes. The value of this is always true, which means the code that I have inside of my curly brackets is always going to run. No matter what the mode of operation, we are going to update our stars, we are going to update our player. So which is why in the start state, my stars are moving, my player can move. So we want to change that. We want to ask a question that is not always true. We want to ask a question that is sometimes true, sometimes false. And when it is true, when the answer to that question is yes, only then will we update our stars and update our player. So what question should we ask here? Well, we only want to update our stars or update our player if we are in the play mode. So we're going to look at our current game mode variable, and we're going to check to see 3 equal signs for a strict check for equality if it is equal to the game mode objects dot, for our properties, we got lose, play, and start. We're going to check to see if it's equal to its play property. Now, when we start our game, we currently start our game with current game mode equal to start. So this is not true, which means these lines should no longer run. Stationary stars. An immovable ship. I can't move. So now I have to press enter to begin. I'm spamming the enter key. I'm not moving. I'm not beginning my game. So now what we got to do is we somehow got to figure out when we press enter, we want our program to change from the start mode to the play mode. And that's where mission 7 is going to take us. So let's go to mission 7. Mission 7 finds us in a brand new function called key pressed. Let's look where this function lives. This function, if I scroll up just a little bit, is with draw and with setup. Those are our P5 game loop functions. Remember, setup gets called as soon as we start our game, and then draw gets called every single frame of our game. Key pressed also gets called. Key pressed will get called anytime the user presses a key on the keyboard. Not when they're holding a key down, when they go through the actual act of pressing it down. So when it transitions from not being pressed to being pressed. And when that happens, we get access to what key was being pressed. So if I press the P key, this function is going to run. If I press the 5 key, this function is going to run. If I press the enter key, this function is going to run. And the first thing we do in here is we ask a question. We ask, is the key code of the key that was just pressed enter. And if that answer is yes, we ask a follow-up question. Okay, so we have like nested questions, a question inside of a question. So a key was pressed, this function gets called, we ask, was that key the enter key? If it was, we ask another question. Is the current game mode's value start, or is the current game mode's value lose? Because if you remember, on our start menu, we prompt the user, press enter to begin. On our lose menu, or our lose overlay, I'm just going to set this back to lose so we can see it. On our lose overlay, I think we prompt the user to, look here, press enter to relaunch. So if we are in the start state or the lose state, we want the enter key to trigger going back into playing. All right, so what we need to do, if we press enter and our current state is start or lose, let's go back and play the game. So how do we do that? Well, we just take our current game mode variable and we assign it a new value. We're going to switch it to game mode. There's our object that holds all of our possible game states, and we're going to set it to the play state. Let's see if this works. So I'll refresh my game. Here we are. Press enter to begin. Oh, and look at that. My start screen goes away. My stars start moving. My ship starts flying. So this is really great. Now, start overlay works. Play state works. How do I transition to the lose state? Because we've tested start state and play state. Well, I'm going to let you in on a little secret. I have written a debug key. So inside key pressed, if I scroll down just a little bit, I have a debug key right here to force a lose screen. It asks a question. It says, hey, a key was pressed. If that key is equal to lowercase g, or that key was equal to capital G. We don't need key codes here because these are letters, so we can just test the letter, G or capital G. If that's the case, we're going to look. Follow-up question, what is the current game mode? If it is play, we're going to automatically switch it to lose. And this should force our lose overlay to then be drawn. So let's test this. Let's fly our ship. There, I'm flying my ship, and I hit G for game over. And we transition to the game or the lose state. So there's our lose overlay. So this is great. So now I'm in the lose state. If I press enter again, okay, we check the key code was enter. We're not in the start state anymore, but we're in the lose state. I should be able to go back into playing. Let's test it. I hit enter, and I'm back into playing. Hey, this is pretty good. There's just one problem. When I went back into playing, my ship stayed way up here. It didn't reset back to its starting position. So we have to make sure that before we transition to the play state, we call that function that resets all of our values, and that is the reset game to defaults. I'll start typing, and then I'll do a tab for autocomplete. There's the function name. I need a set of parentheses to call it, and a semicolon for good JavaScript. Now, when we run this, I play the game. Zoop. I'm way up here in the corner. I hit G for game over. There's my lose overlay screen. To relaunch when I press enter, I'm reset back to my starting position. Perfect. This system is working so well. There's just one slight problem. If I hit game over, it tells me I can press R to go right back to the title screen. And right now, R, hitting it, does nothing. So we got to link that functionality up. Mission number 8. Finds us in the key pressed function because I'm pressing another key. I'm going to press the R key to transition to the title screen. So if we look here, I'm asking a question, and it currently says if false. Well, false is always false. This question is always going to be no. So this line of code, these lines of code will never ever run. I don't want a question that is always no. I want a question that is sometimes yes and sometimes no. And if the answer to that question is yes, we're going to reset our game to defaults and then set our current game mode back to start. This is going to cause our program to transition and show the start overlay again. So that question that I want to ask is, was the R key pressed? And if we look, we can mimic that right down here with our debug screen. So we're going to say if key, 3 equal signs for a strict check of equality is equal to lowercase r, or key is equal to 3 equal signs for strict equality, capital R. That way if we got like our caps locks on, we can still reset and play our game. If that is the case, then we will reset our game. And with that, our game state system, our overlay system is complete. Let's test everything in its entirety. So right now, I am in the start state. In the start state, I see my start overlay. I can't move my ship. My stars are not moving. That functionality is paused. If I press enter, that key pressed will get triggered and will move from the start state to the play state. Now the start overlay is gone. I see my game world. My stars are moving. My ship is moving. I can fly all the way around. I can trigger a game over with the G key. And when I do, I move from the play state to the lose state. So now I see my lose overlay. Awesome. Everything is disabled. Stars aren't moving. Players not moving. If I hit enter again, I will change back into the play state. The lose overlay is gone. Now I can fly all the way around. And if I hit game over, there's our lose state again. Let's test our reset functionality. So if I press R, I'm going to go from the lose state to the title state. And there we have it, back to our title screen. Awesome. I think this is a great place to stop. Our game now has the logic and the ability to swap out one state for another and show the correct overlay or game window. We have 3 states in our game: the start state, the play state, and the lose state. But hopefully you could see how this system could be expanded. Maybe we want a pause state. So what would that entail? Well, in our game mode object, we just put another property, the pause property, so now we'd have 4. And then we'd check to see if a key was pressed, maybe a P key. When the P key is pressed, we set our current game mode to the pause state. And then when we do our draw scene, we check to see if that is active. And if it is, we'll draw our pause overlay, which might be a black screen over our window that just has the text pause right in the center. If that's something you want to try to implement, I encourage you to do it. I think you might be able to handle it at this point, and it would be a really cool system to add to our game. But for right now, I think we are set here with our 3 states of start, play, and lose, and we'll end here. So I'll see you in our next video.